Today we lit the Advent candle that symbolizes love. And we have a hymn that says, "Love came down at Christmas," and certainly it did. Some of you may like the Not Safe for Children Christmas movie called Love Actually, where we're reminded that love is all around, that song. So Christmas is about love, but love can be hard to get a handle on, sort of abstract. So John, at the start of his gospel, talked about Jesus in a couple different ways that are slightly more tangible. One is that he talked about Jesus as the Word that took on flesh and dwelt among us. And he also talks about Jesus as light, the true light that was coming into the world. And these are ways to talk about God sending Jesus to show what God is like in fullness, to be God with us. Now, I like both of these images because they show God's inbreaking into our world. Before there is a word, there is silence. And there has to be a word to break it. Darkness is the absence of light. It's dark, and then there's light to break into it. In fact, John's account, which starts in the beginning, might remind you of Genesis, which starts just the same way. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. In the beginning, there was darkness. The world was without form and void, and God said, God spoke, "Let there be light." So John is linking Jesus to this God of creation. Jesus, the Word, was in the beginning with God, present at creation, part of the triune God that we worship, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, Creator, Redeemer, and Sustainer. Today, as we continue our calm and bright sermon series, I'm really drawn to the image of light and darkness as we prepare for Jesus, the true light, who has come and is coming into the world. In just a few days, we'll have our shortest day of the year, or if you prefer, our longest night, depends on how you want to look at it. And I often think that in our modern society, we have really lost touch with what it is truly like to be in darkness at night. After all, I've got screens in my house that emit blue light. You know, like when I grab my phone, like it shines in my face. And it says, check your email at 4 a.m. We've lost touch with what darkness is. Even my own experience with it is, I have to think back to my childhood. I'm a suburban kid, as you might know, but I have what's known in the business as country cousins. And so we would go see them. And how I know they're country cousins, directions from their house to their house included the phrase, "turn off the paved road." So if you have cousins, they're country cousins. If your house involves turn off the paved, you might be a country cousin yourself. But we would go out to their place in South Georgia, and if we arrived at night, it was dark, particularly if the moon wasn't full. Like it was a whole new level of dark. And you know that expression, can't see the hand in front of their face? When I was little, I thought that meant they were just really dense. But then I went to see my country cousins, and we had pulled the car up, but we were out of reach of the porch light, and it was dark. For an experiment, I did this. And guess what? Couldn't see a thing. That's darkness. I think we might have lost touch with that. Imagine for a moment what winter nights would be like for folks in the northern hemisphere like us, okay? The times when the days get shorter and the nights get longer. And imagine that there is no electricity. Imagine to get light or to get heat, you need fire. If you go back far enough, you could even say that the dark, cold nights of winter were kind of dangerous. It was dangerous to travel back then. Going back to even medieval times and back further, bandits found cover under dark of night. It would be a hard thing to get a doctor or a midwife to come deliver the baby or take care of the sick ones. Also back then, it was kind of a lean time. Today, you can get any fruit or vegetable in any season because of the miracles of modern living. But I remember a time back in Georgia that I would go to the grocery store with my grandmother and there wouldn't be oranges. Because it just wasn't time for oranges. You couldn't just get a watermelon in January, because that's just not the way God works. Think about the time when, in the winter, people were eating the food that they had stored, since the crops were all harvested and the land was covered with ice. It was a dark, risky, vulnerable time, which is why I stand by last week's statement that if you look at it this way, it's hardly the most wonderful time of the year. It's a dangerous time. It's a scary time. And even though we have done all we can do to eliminate physical darkness with electric lights of all descriptions, there's something about the dark that still gets to us, right? For example, every child I have ever come in contact with, and even the adult child that is talking to you now, every single one of them at some point has had a fear of the darkness. And then we don't really grow out of it either. I don't know about you, but on some bright noonday as I'm going about my business, if I have a little headache, at no point do I think, that's it, I have a brain-eating parasite. I'm just going through my day in the middle of the day, right? But at 2 a.m, when it's dark out, every little symptom is it's fatal. My life is over. And then if I go down and visit the blue screen of heavenly light that is my phone or my computer, and I Google it, I discover it's absolutely fatal. At one point, I think I woke Eric up with the assurance that I had a tropical disease that you only get in the tropics, hence tropical disease. And he tried to assure me by saying something like, relax, go back to sleep, which doesn't work at all. I've tried to tell him. It's 2 a.m. It's those long, dark nights of the soul when we relive old losses and bad decisions. Not 2 p.m. Try as we might with our headlights and porch lights and night lights, and even with Alexa, we cannot keep darkness at bay. So, I hardly think it's an accident that December 25th comes on the heels of this winter solstice, this shortest day, this lowest of the low, this darkest of the dark. It says something beautiful and true about God, that we would celebrate God's coming to us, not in the long, strong days of summer when we have cucumbers and tomatoes from the garden coming out of our ears, not when we're sleeping with the windows open. No, we celebrate God coming to us when we need God most, in the cold night of winter, when we hurt and grieve and doubt. That is the time that God sends Jesus to be our light at a time when we have none of our own to offer. And as I said last week, Christmas comes not because we feel happy or because we are strong or healthy or capable or perfect. Christmas comes as a gift from God precisely because we are none of those things. Comes to comfort, comes to sit with us, comes to offer hope and new life. Into our darkest night, God's word is spoken, and that word is the light of the world. I picture like a speeding motorcade, an Acela train of light, bringing deliverance, healing, and freedom, like a rescue helicopter speeding over a flooded city, or an ambulance rushing to the scene. In Jesus, the light of the world, help is on the way for people who are sitting in darkness. Now, I went to high school in a suburb of Jacksonville, Florida. And one of my teachers, my math teacher, Mr. Walters, had a daughter who had just started college in South Carolina. And we loved Mr. Walters. He looked like Hank from King of the Hill. Exactly the same sort of square face and pocket protector and glasses. And I loved him. And even though he was my math teacher, he was awesome. And he was one of the teachers that wrote my college recommendation, which tells you we must have had a bond, because I was not getting an A in his class. So, and his recommendation included the phrase, Mandy is sure to excel in her chosen field of the humanities. So Mr. Walters had this daughter who had just started college in South Carolina. And he comes into class one Monday morning, and he looks awful. Big bags under his eyes. Looks like he hasn't slept. He staggers in, and he says, well, I just got back from South Carolina. We got a call a couple days ago that my daughter's appendix had burst. And so I just got in the car as soon as I hung up the phone, and I went to be with her. And some kids were math whizzes who could do the math, but the rest of us were like, okay, you were here on Friday, you went to South Carolina, and you're back here right now. And he said, yeah, I just got in the car, I put a Pavarotti CD in the player. I turned it up as loud as it would go, I took off. I went as fast as I could go to South Carolina. He made it in something like 17 minutes. It was super impressive. Now, as a 17-year-old, what we focused on was our Hank Hill teacher, like tearing down those pine tree lined roads, breaking every speed limit known to man. We thought that was pretty awesome. Pocket protector flapping in the wind. That's what we focused on. But you know what happened then? I grew up. And I had children, and then I saw it completely differently. I saw the love part. I saw the speeding Acela train of love. The hang on, sweetie, mommy and daddy are coming part. The white knuckles on the wheel, where you're mentally donating your organs just in the car. You're like, I got 2 kidneys, they can have one of them. I need half a liver, probably just half. And then I'm not even a drinker, so like a quarter. I only need just a little bit of liver. And I could use to have a smaller stomach, so my child could have half my stomach. You're already doing the math, because love. I saw the love that lowers the mountains and raises the valleys and prepares the way for love. That is the love of our God that comes to us at Christmas. Not sending the hired hand to look after us sheep, but sending the Son, sending the Good Shepherd to be with us when we had no other way out, to heal and save and love and free. Now, when the kids were small, we would take them on fancy vacations, including one to a place called Luray Caverns. And I'm from the South, we call it Luray. So say that with me. Luray. Okay. So it's really cool. And we took the kids when they were little. Lydia was 5, Nathan was 7. And right as we're plunking down the credit card, it's a lot of money to go to Luray Caverns, as it turns out. We're plunking down the credit card. Right then, I noticed Lydia's getting a little nervous. And it was then that I realized that her fear of the dark was somehow playing into this trip to Luray. So you go down these stairs and they're lit. They have like the lights along where your feet are. So I knew we were in trouble because it wasn't even dark there. We're going down the stairs, and with every step, Lydia's saying, "It's not scary, it's not scary, it's not scary, it's not." And I thought, oh, this is going to be a long hour and a half. So we're on the tour, and the guide, who was probably like a 19-year-old kid, he says, "Stay with the group because the lights are on timers. If you get too far from the group, all the lights go out, and you won't know how to turn them back on." Lydia is like a dog that loves you. She's right there by my leg, and I see every drop of blood go out of her face. She's doing the math, right? And she says, "Mommy, that won't happen, will it? That won't happen. That won't happen." Now, a part of me wanted to say, of course not. It won't happen. But that's not how life is it? Like, you can't promise no darkness. That's the curveball of our faith, you know. Jesus doesn't say you'll never have a storm, right? Jesus says, "I'm Lord over every storm that I'm with you in the boat." So thank the good Lord, my pastoral instincts kicked in, and I said, we will be okay no matter what happens. Thank goodness, because, spoiler alert, I think this is even part of the tour, we're by the wishing well, be advised. The lights go out. All the lights go out. The whole joint goes black. Bam! And Lydia is too shocked, too scared to even make a sound. But she's right there by my leg. So when the lights didn't come right back on, what did I do? I scooped her up in my arms. I held her as close to me as I possibly could. I put my head against her head. I put her heart against my heart. And the lights came on, and I thought I was going to have to do pastoral care on her for the next 10 years. I was making therapy appointments in my head for her. And I look at her, and the lights come on, and she's beaming. She's smiling at me, and she says, "Man, that was dark. That was darky dark. That was as dark as you couldn't see your hand in front of you. That was so," and she goes, "But it was okay because you were with me the whole time." Friends, maybe it's not the dark we're afraid of. Maybe we're worried that we're all alone in it. And in Advent, we are reminded that in Jesus, we are never alone in the dark. Jesus is the light that the darkness has not overcome. Jesus is the light of God's love. So no matter what darkness comes to us, we are not alone. We are never alone. And we are held close to the Father's heart. I think that's why when Jesus came, they called him Emmanuel, God with us. Not God against us, not God ignoring us, not God judging us, but God with us. As John put it, I don't think he said that, but no one has ever seen God. But it is the Son who is close to the Father's heart who has made God known. This is the mighty and loving God that comes to us in Jesus. It's not light in the abstract. It's not an energy force or a tractor beam. It is the love of God made real in human form. So in Jesus, we have a God who knows what it is to suffer and cry and hurt. It is the love of God that came into the world with the pain of childbirth and the cries of a baby. And this love of God faced everything darkness had to throw at it. Everything. Think about Good Friday. You want to talk about a long, dark night of the soul. That love of God was made victorious over darkness in an empty garden tomb as the sun peeked over the horizon on Easter morning. So, What does this mean for us as a church? If Jesus is the light of the world, if Jesus brings us the love of God in this way, I think it means that Glenmar is not a church that is afraid of the dark. I think it means that Glenmar is uniquely equipped to share the light of Christ with our neighbors in all that we do. You know, John was a witness to the light. So you might say that we're called to be a witness to the light, only Jesus took it up a notch from that. Because Jesus said about himself that he was the light of the world. And then you know what? He turned to his disciples. He turned to the church. He turned to us. And he said, you are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hid. I see Glenmar, a church on a hill, with its really tall, recently refurbished, thank you, Dan Kagi, awesome cross, and the windy height that God has given here in this building. And I see us as a beacon of Christ's light for this community. And we do this in every day around here. After all, the world has its dark pockets. But you know who should go into the dark corners? People with a light. We're uniquely equipped. We share Jesus' mission. Preaching good news to the poor, release to the captives, recovery of sight to the blind, freeing the oppressed, proclaiming the year of the Lord's favor. Because Jesus is the light, and we reflect his light in the world. Wherever we are, we carry the light of God's love. Not just in this building, but everywhere we go, we carry with us the light of Christ's love. So, whatever the name of your darkness, know that you are not alone. Jesus is Lord over every corner of our lives, every corner of our hearts. And there is a light that shines in the darkness. And that light has not been overcome. In our opening hymn, People Look East, the verse that speaks to me today is this one. Stars, keep the watch. When night is dim, one more light the bowl shall brim, shining beyond the frosty weather, bright as sun and moon together. People look east and sing today. Love, the star, is on the way. Amen.